I'd like to hand it over to Liz Solar of Solar Media, who's a very active member in our Charles River Alliance and has a perspective on so many different topics around marketing, audio, messaging, and branding that our conversation about that led to this session was a tremendous learning experience for me. This is her concept, so I'm going to hand it over to you, Liz, and for the next 45 minutes or so, it's yours. Go for it. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, John. So I'm Liz Solar Media. I speak for a living. I also write for a living. And I always like to start off with a quote. And this is it's attributed to Dorothy Parker, who said, "I hate writing. I love having written." And anybody who has ever written anything probably agrees with that. It's painful to write. It's hard work. You need patience and persistence, and you need to focus on your passion and make it something that other people can get passionate about. And so life gets in the way, and we're busy with family, friends, our full-time job. How the heck do we have time to write about our business? We're already immersed in our business. We don't have the time. So luckily, I have a series of incredibly talented professionals from the publishing world to help out today. We have Tom Collins from Master Book Builders and his partner in crime and life, Yvonne DeVita, who is also known as the Book Whisperer. We have an amazing and very prolific ghostwriter, Sherry Grenadier. And we also have a newly minted author, writer, and somebody who's written probably his entire life, a lot of commercials. He is an audio genius and a good friend and colleague, Michael Coleman. Please welcome the panel. I want to start with, given that it's so difficult to write a book and it takes so much work, and why do we need another book about marketing? Why should you write a book? Tom, do you want to pick that up?
Yeah, in our prep thing, I said basically on the time question, if you don't have time, if you think you don't have time to write a book, then you don't have time to market your business. Being the person who wrote the book is just an incredibly valuable marketing tool. And you have to think of writing a book, if it's a nonfiction business-related book that shows off your expertise, as one of the most powerful marketing tools you can ever create.
And so I want to talk to Michael Coleman right now, because Michael just finished a book in the last several months and is on that path. Michael, what was the impulse to write a book?
I wrote in the intro, I did not want to write this book. I was compelled. I had to write it because this was personal for me. I've met thousands, close to 10,000 small, medium, large business owners over the years. And with the ever-changing landscape of communication, people think with the new tools that are there, we have the internet, we have condenser microphones, all these great tools to communicate. We're doing less communicating now. And we live in an over-communicated mess age. That's why I call this a better message in a mess age. That's what we live in. And you just look at all of these people in a room together. There's one thing that we're not doing. We're not touching each other physically. I'm not saying we're going to walk around hugging and holding hands, but you need that. What we just did before, and for the people who just came in late, I think it was Melissa, Dennis, I watched you pop on earlier. We had, John, how many minutes did we have when we got together? Just to speak, I think it was 10.
Just about 15. Just about 15.
Some of us started getting into the content of it, and you pulled the reins and then said, no, not yet. Think about when we worked in a work environment in that thing called an office. We'd go into the conference room, we'd sit down at a table, and Liz, how are you? How are the kids? How's your husband? How's everyone doing? And you catch up on life. Yvonne, how are things? How's the cat? Oh, the cat's walking around with this and that. Those things are huge.
Yeah.
We don't have those things anymore. You can't get that in an email because we have to get down to business. We have to do. So therefore, the soul connection between people, we think it's still there. It's not. We're slowly disconnecting.
So what you're talking about is the impulse was a feeling that you had about communication. So that was the reason for you to write it and get it out there. And there is that warm, fuzzy feeling about, I just wrote a book. It's a huge achievement. But what are the benefits? In the end, it's all about the other person. What is the other person, the reader, going to gain from this? So what are the benefits to both that benefit both you and the reader for that book's existence? And maybe, Yvonne, you can talk to some of that.
Oh, certainly. I like to tell people that things come to those who write. And writing, Liz, we do it. Writing and reading are things that we do all the time. We don't think about it, okay? And in today's busy, chaotic world that Michael talked about, people are using the tools, and I'll touch on social media, and let's say LinkedIn. And I say this a lot to people. When you're on LinkedIn and you're writing these wonderful posts and they're about your business and what you do and how you can help solve the problem someone else has in your field of endeavor, suddenly I say to people, just take 3 months of those LinkedIn posts and we'll turn it into a book. And now you can reach out. And in the old days, when we said reach out and touch someone, it was through a telephone. And today, I think you can reach out and touch someone through your book. And again, to the point you made, it is never for the author. So I talk to my authors and I say, you're my client. I'm here to help you with this book and make sure that you're telling the story and it's carried through and all the right words are used and all that kind of thing. But my focus is on the reader, the audience that we have identified for the book. Now, is this the right word for them in this paragraph? Is this the right chapter? Is this the right story? How are you going to engage that reader? And the best way to do that is to tell stories. So I task my authors with storytelling. If they come to me and they've written a really nice report about an incident that happened that they want to share because it's important, and I look at it and I say to them, nobody wants to read a report. Nobody wants to open a book up and read a PowerPoint presentation. They want the story. So I make them cry. I make them not cry physically, but I say to them, you need to cry a little. You need to bleed a little on the page. The people who are reading your book, they're out there bleeding. They're trying to make their business work. They're trying to start a business, whatever it is they're trying to do that your book is to help them for. It's hard for them. So they want to know the backstory of you and how that worked. And that is the beginning of your marketing, Liz. That is the beginning of connecting with the reader before the book is even published. Connect with them while you're writing the book. Again, we have social media. You build a community. You can have a newsletter. We like to have our authors have an author website. So if this is separate from your business, or you can have it, if you have a business, you can have an author page, but it should be dedicated to your writing in your book.
That is a really excellent, that is an excellent point in terms of storytelling. We are really great now in collecting facts and information. And what does it mean if there's no context? I can remember an instructor telling me once, the queen died, and then the king died. Those are facts.
Yep.
The queen died and the king died from a broken heart.
Yep.
It's a story. So making that visceral human connection with another person, which is what we're trying to do when we have a book. Just like I'm a voice actor, we're a dime a dozen. Somebody has to come out with a compelling story for me to want to read that because I know the business. And I just wanted to address something to Sherry now, because Sherry, you are...
Quickly before Sherry, I can't wait to hear Sherry. I love Sherry. Sure. One thing I want to say, Liz, to the point of what you just said about the queen died, the king died, is the Hemingway. The short story, the Hemingway, I think it's 6 words or something, put an ad in the paper, baby shoes for sale, never worn.
Yes, I wrote a post on that once on because the brevity of writing, what is it? Brevity is, what is it? The soul of wit. And sometimes we can say so much with so much power by putting those ideas in a very digestible form. And I know for Sherry, you've written hundreds, right? At least 150 books. Yes. And you work like Jack of all trades or Jill of all trades, because you have worked with every type of person, a variety of industries. How do you switch into those mindsets, and how do you collaborate? Because you're in some ways co-writing that book with somebody. Yeah. How do you get to their essence when you're one person removed?
Yeah, and that can be a tough call at times, but most of the time when I first meet with an author and then they have a book in mind, I do like to get to the heart of it. What is their message? Just like Michael said, you were passionate about what's going on, and I agree with you that I'm seeing that myself. I always be crazy when I look down. I remember sitting down to a restaurant and a whole family sat down next to me and every single one of them was on their phone. I'm like, hello, can you all just have a conversation? Anyway, off topic. But yeah, so obviously when I meet with the author, finding that goal, what's the purpose of the book? I have to say a book for an author, it's designed to help them make money, enhance their career, position them as the expert. What are they passionate about? And all of that has to be addressed. And I agree with you, Liz, about telling stories. Starting off with stories is always an enjoyable way to start the book. It's fun for both, for the reader as well as the author and myself. The cost of not writing a book really just can keep you where you are. It's amazing how much having a book will open up doors that you never thought were possible.
Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Tom.
No, that's all right. I was thinking the term for business people is lost opportunity cost. People don't think about what they could have had if they had done something different.
And for people who want to get into the speaker circuit, you can't get into it unless you have a book.
Correct.
You can't even have a social media platform. We're talking about the beginning stages. What are the benefits to everybody? Because if you're just writing it for yourself, that's lovely. Put it in a drawer, you're all set. But how do you write a book that someone's actually going to want to buy? Because we have myriad choices now, particularly with the media that we consume in whatever way we consume it. What are the elements that go into creating a book that I want to read? And how do you discern who that audience is? So when you're ready to publish it, they're ready to receive it.
That's a big one, Liz. That's who is the audience, right?
Yeah.
Generally, people I talk to, one of the first questions I say to them, have you ever thought of writing a book? And they always say, I have. But I haven't written a book because I don't know what to write about. And so that's where Sherry and I come in, where we can help them with tell us the stories, and we'll help them compose it into a book. But when you get to who is the audience, a lot of people think because the book they're writing, they want so many people to read it, that the audience is everyone. So it's everyone, because my book is relatable to everyone. And you have to pull them in and say, not all 7 billion people on the planet are going to read your book or even want to. However, let's talk about the core group of people that actually want the book. And so who are they? If they're women. So sometimes, I want women. This is a book for women in business. That's great. Okay. Which women in business? What kind of business? And then we just continue to drill down. And once you get to that small group, with small could be several hundred or several thousand, but you get to that group of people who are your audience, I remind them that all the other extraneous people on the outside of that might also be interested in the book, but let's write it for this group of people we know actually want it.
So you go very narrow and then say, so people know specifically what that is. But then anybody else is welcome to come into the pool and play if they want to. Michael, in your experience working with Yvonne and Tom, tell me your initial expectation about who you thought that reader was and how they were helpful in helping shape who that actual reader was. Or do you have an actual reader in mind for your book?
When I began, I actually wrote, I don't think it's up there. I kept writing. I had a friend of mine who was a writer, and he just gave me this one rule: begin with the door closed, start writing with the door closed, and don't stop. And I didn't. This was during COVID, so I just kept writing, and I had a lot of information. So you need an objective person to look at that and say, this should be over here, this should be over here. You begin with that. You just write. You write with where your heart tells you to go. And sometimes you blather on, because Liz knows this and Yvonne knows this. I have AD like you wouldn't believe. Like I said, oh, look, a bird. So I totally need to be not reeled in. I have a net thrown over me and say, stop, put this over here, over there. And even just saying that right now, I totally forgot what your question was. But it's,
who do you think your audience is? Like, how would you, because I think this is a real service. You're a marketer and you're an audio guy. So who is, because it can't be everybody.
That's the first question that I ask all of my clients. Give me one person. Who is it? It's men and women. Okay, break it down. What do they do? Why do they need you? Because people don't care. Let's break it down. We're all the same in some way. I could tell you about my situation and I could sell something, but deep down inside, oh, that sounds great. What you really care about, what can this guy do for me? That's really what it comes down to. Are we all selfish beings? No, not in that sense, but we're looking for some way to advance something. What can I take out of this situation? And that's really what this is about. So initially for this book, it was people who were business owners, entrepreneurs, solopreneurs who had done a commercial before. We know those commercials. Hi, I'm from AAA Automotive, and you're looking for the best quality, and it's junk ads, horrible. Because 3 months later, they realize, I'm not getting any money out of this. I say, I know, it's a bad message when you have. So let's start at the beginning. So that's basically what it would go on. But then I realized this isn't about advertising or really marketing. It's about messaging. And everyone messages. Everyone here that I'm looking across this room, you're all a brand. Everyone is a brand by the way you dress, the way you speak, the way you present yourself, the way you clear your throat. Everything is how we communicate. And like I said before, in this message, we assume that people know what we want. They don't. They really don't. Theoretically, we're marketing ourselves all the time. A waiter telling you the specials of the day is marketing not only the restaurant or the kitchen, he's marketing him or herself as they're speaking. So all of this comes into play with this book as well. The question was Yvonne and Tom and how they helped immensely. Because otherwise I would have let's go back to the room of the writer. There's notes, papers, Post-it notes everywhere that are around a room where, oh, there's another note here and there. It's really corralling write them down. Then you need someone to shepherd those thoughts into cubicles, into pens.
Michael, those are really excellent points because like children, it takes a village and I always think of a book as your baby. And having been through the labor and birth process, I would say that was like a cakewalk compared to writing a book. So you really need those people who were there to support you and be there and triage with you in those moments, especially those late night moments of just going crazy. I want to get to, because there's so many things that you're talking about that can go right if you are actually listening and you do have a plan. I'm a creative and let's be spontaneous, but that's not always a great strategy. And if we're trying to sell our book, we really need a strategy to do that. I'm going to open this up to the group. I grew up with Glamour magazine, the fashion do's and the fashion don'ts. Let's talk about some of the don'ts. What do you see? And you're like, oh my God, I've got to talk this person out of it. Or things that you've seen that perhaps sometimes you are playing cleanup for the last person that was helping someone with a book. What are you seeing that is just sabotaging someone's ability to sell that book or write it correctly?
Yeah.
So you want to don't.
I want all the don'ts you have.
Yeah. Don't go cheap on the cover design. When back in the day, Yvonne and I actually ran a publishing business where we were the publishers, and occasionally a client would come to us and say, I have a great designer that I want to do the cover. And I would say, have they done book cover designs? No, but they're a really great designer. And I would say, then it's $500 extra on your fee to us. And the reason is book cover design is a specialty within design, and it just isn't something you should go to Fiverr and hire a designer and slap together, because most people who don't know book cover design will just focus on the front cover. And a book cover has three pieces: the front, the back, and the spine. They need to work together. I tell the story all the time. When you think about book cover design, go to a bookstore or a library and just watch people. And there will be this standard, almost universal behavior where they'll see a book over on the table, walk over to it, and they've now judged it on the front cover. They pick it up and they turn it over. And if the back cover has done its job, they will either open the book to see more about it, or they will go to the counter to check it out or buy it. The book cover is such an important piece, and don't pretend that your brother's kid who's in design school should be the cover designer.
Yeah. And so secondly, Liz, don't edit your own work.
Yeah.
In fact, don't even edit it while you're writing. You have this compulsion to say to yourself, I could have done that sentence better, that paragraph. I'm going to go back and fix it. Or you say to yourself, this chapter really sucks. I'm taking it out and I'm not going to use it. I tell my authors, I'm the person who's going to do the editing. I'm going to tell you, no, that sentence doesn't work and why, and then we're going to fix it. I'll tell you if a story or paragraph doesn't belong. You need to just write. Find the time that is most convenient for you. I want you to write every day if you can, if not, at least 3 times a week, and sit down and write. And it's so much easier to take the content that doesn't belong out than it is to go back and say, now we've got to add all this content because when you were editing yourself, you thought it didn't belong, and it really does. So don't be your own editor, please.
That is an excellent point, because anecdotally, I'm in a writer's group, all writing fiction. I can't tell you how many people rewrote chapter 1 5 or 6 times. It's okay, but what about the rest of your book? It's too self-critical.
So Liz, I have an ebook called 13 Excuses for Not Writing Your Book. And throughout the book, I say to people, I know you're still on chapter 1 and it isn't done because it's got to be perfect. That is one of the excuses. I haven't finished it because I'm not done with chapter 1.
The crazy part of that, and especially in fiction, is that you're going to have to, no matter how perfect you think chapter 1 is, when you finally go to chapter 2, you're going to have to come back and rewrite chapter 1 because the plot is going to go where it wants to go. And by chapter 10, chapter 1 won't be right anymore.
A writer friend of mine says most people have to rewrite chapter 1 after they've finished the whole book. They go to the end of the book and like, oh, wait a minute, that is not chapter 1 at all. Sometimes we just
don't try to write the introduction unless you need it for organization, to flesh out your outline. Don't try to write the introduction until the book is done.
So Sherry, do you experience this with ghostwriting?
Oh my gosh. Yes. And that's why an outline is certainly helpful, but it's got to be flexible. It's going to change. There's always going to be different things that come up. The reason a ghostwriter is so helpful in getting authors' books done is that we ask the questions that the reader is going to want to know. And sometimes the author is so close to the material that they never even thought of a lot of the questions I've asked. They're like, oh, I hadn't even thought about that. Or I didn't think anybody would want to know. I'm like, yeah, they do, especially if they're not educated in the material, whatever it happens to be. That would be huge. And I agree with Tom. The introduction is the last thing I write. I don't even go near that till the book's done. And a lot of times I end up moving chapters around. So it is
Yeah.
a process.
Yeah, we do too. It's one of the things where, as I did that with the book I'm working on with Michael, I think it was chapter 3, and I said to him, no, this is chapter 1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
In our How to Write a book, the book is structured around the analogy of building a house or HGTV. You're flipping or changing something, and the analogy with is you have a blueprint or a set of engineering drawings, and then you open up a wall, and things are going to change. You have to do shop drawings on site and move things around. Sometimes where you thought the powder room was going to go is going to end up on the other side of the house.
Yeah.
There were also, I remember doing other chapters. When Liz and I worked at a radio station years ago, I used to do a lot of collages for, let's say, Mother's Day or Father's Day, 4th of July. And there would be these sound collages. And I would start sometimes at the end or the middle. And I found out that things would branch out. And it's almost, I don't know if you're familiar with a mind map, where you just write in the middle of a page. And then from there, you break out. Just whatever the idea is, put it down. Just put it down there. And then, if you're still stuck on it, that's the beauty of having an editor, is Yvonne and Tom will come in and say, no, this is, but I learned a long time ago through radio, when someone would say, no, that's too long, because again, everything is time in radio. Say, wait a minute, I have a 90-second piece that I just did. No, I don't. I have 4 shorter pieces now. Now I can spread this out. Now everyone's going to hear that. And that was enlightening for me. That really changed everything around. So think about this. Wait a minute. I now have another book. And from this, I kept writing so much. There's a possibility I might have enough for a 3rd book out of this. Yvonne and Tom are helping me with the 2nd one. So it's, yay. This is
the gift that keeps on giving. So we have this beautiful, perhaps towards the end of a very long journey and lots of frustration and edits. We finally have the form of a book in some form, whether people collect blog posts or there's lots of very hybrid types of narrative works out there. And that's exciting to me, but whatever the form is, now we're like, oh, that hard work is done. But now you do have to market it. And we could spend forever just talking about the marketing of it. But how does one start? We had a good friend who wrote a book, and he's a very smart guy. He's a psychologist, and he wrote about the roots of evil. And he had submitted it to a publisher, and they're like, hey, Joe Schmo, great idea. Who the heck is Joe Schmo? So they loved what he had to say, but he didn't have any cachet. Who knew who he was? So how do potential authors gain some sort of visibility? Because we go to who we know and trust in business. And it's no different with our book, because it's an extension of that business. How do we get known, liked, and trusted enough for somebody to read that book?
First of all, you start talking about the book well before the book is published. I have my authors share pieces of the book. It's okay. You can take a paragraph out of chapter 2, put it on LinkedIn, talk about why it's important. Again, don't just put it on LinkedIn, but talk about why it's important, what the purpose is, and how it's going to help someone. And by the way, it's part of my book, and I'm going to be launching my book at such and such a date. And you do this regularly. You do this and you talk again. You don't talk about the book. You don't put the book out there as, even if you have a mock cover, which is okay. You can create a mock cover and the cover changes before the book is published. You can put the cover out there, but you're talking about yourself, your business, your message. You're not saying to people, hey, I wrote a book, please buy it. It's going to be on Amazon at this time or another. So what happens is, over the weeks and months that you're writing the book, people start to get interested. they start to want to hear more about this story that you're telling them, especially if you have shown how it relates to them and how it's going to solve a problem they have. And so you do this on the platforms that the audience we identified are in. So if it's a business book, LinkedIn is a good audience. You could also take that on Facebook. There are a lot of business groups and whatnot on Facebook. So in the end, you have to start marketing it before it's written. Build the fan club. I always say to people, look at Taylor Swift. Do you know what she did when she first started? She created fan clubs and she got to know everybody. She knew most of them by name. This is what you're doing. You're building relationships. The more relationships you build, the more successful your book is going to be, because if you build a relationship with me, I'm going to talk to Tom about it.
Yeah.
And if Tom likes it, he's going to talk to Michael about it. And now you're building up a community. And that's one of the big things I say to my nonfiction business authors is you want to build a community. It's not just a book for a group of people. It's a book for a community. And I just did a LinkedIn video where I talked about what I would have done differently with my first book. And one of the things was build a community and a movement, because it did get a lot of attention. I just didn't follow up on it.
Yeah. And Sherry, I saw some things because I like to Google people sometimes. There's so much content that comes up with your name. So could you walk us through a little bit of how you were able to establish that and across many platforms, and I think appropriate ones as well?
Yeah, that's a loaded question. How long's the show? No, just kidding. I remember when I started off as a nutritionist, and I was so passionate about helping people get healthy. And I ended up just basically spending 30 minutes a day calling speaker bureaus, event planners, and just saying, hi, my name is Sherry. I have a book coming out called This, That, give them the title. And do you ever get requests for speakers on nutrition? That was it. That's all I would do. 99% of the time, it was yes. Rarely did they ever say no. Or even if they were a business, let's say speaker bureau, for example, they said, you know what? Not right at this moment, but I could hang up the phone and get a call from a company that wants a speaker on nutrition. And I'm like, okay. And so that's how I just got started. And then that snowballed into radio. And then that snowballed into spokesperson work. I did that for 15 years, interviewing doctors on television and radio. And that led to be all kinds of stuff. It was just one gig led to another. But the book is what opened the door. It really positioned me as an expert in
but I'm going to push back just a little bit, Sherry. I think you did it. And this is the important thing. You wrote the book, which was a great accomplishment, but then you got on the phone, you contacted the speaker bureaus, you did the work that had to be done. You didn't ask anyone else to do it. You didn't sit back and say, I don't know what to do. You just took the initiative and said, hey, I think I could now go out on the speaking circuit. How do I do that? Let me call some people. That's how it's done.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
And if you're old enough to remember before the internet, the technique is really the same. In the olden days, you went to business group meetings physically. Now you join the Charles River group here. Once you identify your audience, as Yvonne said, then you find out where they hang out. And if it's online, go join. You don't go join and say, hey, buy my book. You go join and participate and get known. And sooner or later, it'll come up that you're writing a book. So yeah, it's human interaction, as Michael was saying before, and it's still quite doable. The other thing I wanted to talk about in terms of marketing is as the book gets closer to done, it's the advanced reader group that you need to pull together so that you can get a PDF galley copy in front of people and get feedback, number one, so it'll be a better book when it's really done. But the second thing is to get testimonials so that you can plaster them over the cover and online and so on. So that's an important piece. And that will grow out of what everybody has already been saying. That's where you'll find your advanced readers.
Now, is that your beta reader group?
That's what I
Beta
call
reader
them.
group.
Advanced readers, yeah.
They call it advanced reader copy of the book, but yeah, beta groups, there's a lot of different ways to phrase it.
And I feel like we're just scratching the surface, so I'm hoping that we can do this
for
again, because
sure.
I think just the marketing piece we could spend.
Like Sherry
Oh,
said, how long is the
I don't know, but I think because John will start like giving me something like this. Hey, you're cutting into my time.
He's got questions lining up in the
He has,
chat.
and I know
So-
that all of you who are here today, and I thank you all for joining us, but thank you, all of you wonderful human beings, for being here and now answering all these questions. And John, I am going to cede the floor to you, as they say.
Super. Thank you very much. I'm also going to figure out how to unpin you guys so that this can be more of an interactive Q&A. But the first one, I want to make sure, Tiffany had asked, and I think it was addressed, was, is it best to set aside time to write, or just write the material as it comes to mind? And JL answered that, I thought, pretty well. Tiffany, were you satisfied with that answer? If you're there, you can hear us?
Yes.
Excellent. Mary said, what's the average time that it takes to write a book?
There were published studies years ago that estimated 700 to 800 hours. I'm not sure that's really true anymore. I think books tend to be shorter than they were in those days. We feel like a good sweet spot for a business, especially a first book, is going to be in the 150 to 200 pages realm. But that's not a hard and fast rule. It's just a good way. If you have lots more to say, and probably do, then you can write another book.
You totally well, so maybe it's Yvonne or Sherry missed this one. It's like, it takes as long or as short as you want, because if you work with me, then it'll be faster, right?
Yeah.
It isn't that it's going to be faster, John. No. Here's the thing. The question sometimes is, how long should a book be? And to Tom's point, it should be as long as it needs to be, but within the world we live in now, people want to read books under 200 pages, unless they're novels. Novels can be 800 pages if they want, if they're really good. But as far as the question of how long does it take, there are groups out there that will purport to help you write a book in a weekend. Okay, this is not Yvonne and Tom. We do not do that. We believe it takes 6 to 12 months, because there's a lot of intensive back and forth support and writing and editing and all the marketing. We got to help with that. For the most part, I would plan on 6 to 12 months.
Got it. Fascinating question just popped up from Dennis. How is AI affecting writing a book? I think this is something that Tom thinks about a lot. Tom, what's your perspective?
I could read several long blog posts I've written about this already, but the critical piece is, you do not want the AI to write your book. You do not want the AI to write even substantial parts of your book. The Copyright Office has already issued a ruling to a young woman who wrote a graphic novel and used one of the AI image software tools to do the illustrations for it. And they've denied copyright protection for any of the illustrations in the book. She only got protection for the story, the writing part of it. The other piece is that when you put a book up on Amazon, Amazon asks you to certify that you have the rights in the book. And it's a very open question whether anybody owns copyright in material created by an AI. In the UK, they've issued a crazy rule that seems to say that the AI company owns the copyright in the output from the AI. So the big danger, when I first started playing with the ChatGPT and so on, my first reaction was instant outlines. It is a really wonderful, powerful tool for getting ideas, for trying to make sure you're covering all the bases in your topic, but you just do not want to say, okay, write me a chapter on such and such. If you do, read it, crumble it up and throw it away, and then rewrite it in your own words. You just don't want from both ends. Amazon is kicking people off, kicking books off its platform when it decides that the person didn't write enough of it. The other big danger is that both Bard and ChatGPT warn you openly that they may give the very same answer that they gave you to somebody else's similar question. And so if you both then race to publish, one of you is going to be a plagiarist almost immediately. So there's just all kinds of red flags around it, and it will be years before the courts sort them all out. Right. So just be aware of the danger.
I mentioned before that, to me, a chatbot will give you an outline on steroids, and that's it. And look at it that way, to say, I've got Wikipedia in front of me. That doesn't mean you take it all for what it's worth. You look at it as an outline.
Well, okay. For a lot of
JL, did that address your question, JL?
Absolutely, yeah, and more. And okay. I was wondering, as a follow-up, has anybody's actual work been flagged as AI?
Yes.
At some point, yeah. I'm like, I write a sentence.
Well, yeah, you understand that the AI is going across the internet and grabbing content. So is grabbing other people's content to deliver to you. And that's, as Tom said, the problem. But the other big problem, if you think you can have AI write your book, is it's a machine. It has no emotion. Boring. It cannot tell the story.
Yeah.
Well, certainly can't tell your story, right?
It's very difficult for it to tell a human story. And I totally agree with what Yvonne has said, because one of my favorite books is Love in the Time of Cholera. So because I was writing a piece on AI, took that paragraph, and then I gave the facts of what went on in that paragraph. And all it is facts and information, but it's no heart. There's no human connection to it. So until the AI becomes sentient, which I think that writers are just double down on being human, and that will sell your work better than any machine will.
Yeah.
Okay. There are two businessy questions here. One is publisher versus self-publishing. Discuss. Yvonne, you go first.
Okay. Self-publish. Traditional publishers are very hard today. Much, much harder today than it was 30, 40 years ago to get a contract. When you go to a traditional publisher, if you're lucky to get a contract, and God bless you, I will applaud you all the way to the bank for it, they will own the copyright. So you must understand that you do not own the copyright. You can negotiate for digital rights or audio rights, but they're going to fight you because they want those rights also. So you're going to have legal fees in addition. The advance that you might get from a traditional publisher, $3,000, $4,000, you're not going to get $50,000. It just doesn't. It's like the top 1%, 1/10 of 1% are the people who stories that you hear where they have these J.K. Rowlings and Stephen King and all that kind of stuff. And by the way, both of those authors suffered for many years before they got a publisher. But once you get an advance, you have to sell enough books to cover that advance before you see 1 penny of royalties. And the average author sells 250 books. This is just what I'm telling you, and it's because they don't market them. So we say self-publish. Self-publish puts all the control in your hands. You get to choose the cover. Traditional publisher, they choose the cover. You get to choose the interior layout design. Traditional publisher, they choose that. You don't have any say. You get to choose how you want to market it, what you want to happen with it. Traditional publisher, today, because again, they're not going to send you on a book tour. They might put out a press release. Everyone thinks that, they're going to send it to the libraries and they're going to send it to all these bookstores. And that might happen, but so what?
They won't send it to the libraries. They make it available to the libraries. The libraries decide what they're going to order.
So when you're
self-publishing, because Simon &
Schuster
has it on their list does not mean it's going to be in the library.
what we do is we work with our authors to teach them how to do those things. How do you approach the library and get your book in the library? How do you get into Barnes and Noble, the actual bookstore? It doesn't mean you will, but we know the steps that you need to take. We know how to help you get book reviews on Amazon, because the more book reviews you have, the better Amazon's algorithm pushes you up in front of people. So self-publishing to us seems the greatest way to go, because you keep your copyright. For the most part, when you work with a company like ours, we don't take any royalty payments. There are some small press and hybrid companies that do take royalty payments, but it's your book. You should maintain control of it, and you're going to have to market it anyway if you work with a traditional publisher.
Quickly, I want to add one thing. Before I met Tom and Yvonne, I went to another vanity publisher. I won't use their name, but they're in Pennsylvania and they rhyme with Page. But what they did was, did I say that? There was sometimes in my writing, all they did was edit, and they just added a comma here or there, but they didn't really give me any feedback as far as what I was writing. So it just became a factory. So I was paying money for something that I could have done myself or had a friend or my wife do.
Yeah,
Now,
copy and just punctuation.
And I don't care if I'm touting your
Thank you, Michael. But
Well, as Michael is, what we did was, you already had a business entity, but what we do is tell our authors, when you write a book that you intend to publish and sell, you are starting a small business. And you need to treat it as a small business. You set up an LLC. We help them create a publishing imprint for the book so that it isn't. I'd be hard pressed to have anybody tell me that they can tell one of our books is self-published simply by looking at it.
That makes all the difference. That was huge.
Yeah, and understand that absolutely no one is going to look to see who published the book before they buy it.
Right.
Exactly. The starting point, it seems to me that in terms of service providers, that Tom and Yvonne together and Sherry are potentially starting points. So the question that will always come up is, what's the easiest way to get started with you, and what does that cost? What's the on-ramp experience, or how does one get started with you, and when does an author start paying?
With us, it starts with a phone call with me. So we'll do a Zoom call like this. I want to know more about the book. I want to know more about the author's expectations, the audience. We talk about how long it will be. We talk about what the marketing is going to look like, what the author's role is going to be, what my role is going to be. And then we share with them what the book project, because what we do are book projects. So our book projects include the editing, the book cover design, the interior design, advice and training on how to market your book, the book launch. So the book launch is really important. We work with authors to help find beta readers. We work with authors on how to get book reviews. We also have a list of places to send your book for an award, because I love when my authors get an award. And we have had 2 authors win awards with us, 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
One author won 2 awards.
Yeah.
So basically, we want the author to be comfortable. This is a collaborative effort. This is not something that we're doing this and then you have a book. It doesn't work like what happened to Michael with the company he worked with. And then it can run anywhere from $10,000 to $15,000, because we're talking 6 to 12 months. And we're going to put all this effort in. And for Tom and I, we don't work with more than 6 or 7 authors a year, because I put a lot, and so does Tom.
Yeah, we have no interest in scaling. We like working on a personal level with people we like.
Okay.
Yeah. And so in the hybrid, but John, so in other hybrid model, like what Michael had, they do similar things.
Hold on, I'm interrupting you because this is my way. I don't care about how other people do it. I was asking about how you guys do it, because you're here and you're the stars here today. Sherry, Do they start with you or do they start with Yvonne, or either way? Or does it, which starts first?
My job as a ghostwriter is to get the book written. And I have a variety of authors. Some come to me with absolutely nothing, clean slate. They just have an idea in their head. And then it's up to me to put the outline together and give them ideas on what we could cover. I focus mainly on nonfiction. I'll give a good example of that. I did a cookbook actually for a brain neurosurgeon and neuroscientist who wanted a book. He
Yep.
wanted to help patients prevent dementia, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's. So he gave me the run of the field and I just put the outline together. And because of my nutrition background, he loved everything I put in it. Then I have others where it's a memoir, and that's going to involve weekly meetings, 1 hour on Zoom where I interview them. And that's how I create their memoir. And depending on how that goes, on those questions and on the answers and so on, is how the book gets laid out. Like you said, sometimes chapter 3 ends up being chapter 1 and so on. But I don't know that till I get into it and get into the interviews.
Gotcha.
So every project's different.
Of course.
Yeah, and it sounds
Okay,
to me like
we're going
what
to call it. We're going to call it. We're going to
Okay.
on everybody's time. There are a couple of requests and then a couple of announcements. Panelists, please put your website or your email address into the chat because Dennis asked for it, but a bunch of folks are interested. Secondly, there will, in the Charles River Alignable group, there's anybody who's a member, I believe, can post a discussion, and that's where all of us should go to post follow-up topics, discussion items, invitations to other events, anything like that. There are, I don't know, 230 people or so in that group. So you can invite them or announce events on Alignable and off Alignable or resources. Use that as a business tool to introduce yourself. And then you can also know that it's a resource for you. So be tremendously aggressive. There are rules, and I don't care about a lot of them, right? So I'm much more open to promotional messages that are productive and good for people in business. If you step over some line that I've never found yet, I'll let you know, right? I'll be communicative, but not punitive. Another one, just notes, questions. That was it. Oh, there's a writers group on Alignable as well. And I think that was about it. There are a number of events. So regarding the Alignable Alliance, this is the first special topic event that we've ever done. Personally, I think it was well worth the hour, plus the time that the panelists and I invested ahead of time. So thank you, Liz, for having the idea, having the conversation, and then spearheading the collection of the panelists and the conversation. Really cool. Good stuff. It's recorded. I'll post the recording into the group as well. And if you have an idea for a topic that would be compelling with this format of event, right? An interactive conversation that could be appealing to lots of business people in lots of realms, I'd like to talk to you about it. Because from my perspective, the production investment is worth the payoff. I've learned a tremendous amount that I can use for my business. I now know a bunch of quality people who I can refer to and lean on. And everybody on this call probably has resources that would be valuable to others as well. So with that, it's 12:30. I'm calling time. If you'd like to stay on for a couple of minutes, we can do that. If it's time to go, wave your hand, say goodbye, and I hope to see you again soon. See you, Jim. Good to see you. All righty. Thank you. See you, Melinda. I love the wave. Wave and go, bye-bye. Sarah, you're not the farthest away, are you? That was Lori. Yeah, there was somebody she did show up. She came from Wisconsin. So everybody else is here. Okay, I'm gonna call it. Anything else you need? Done?
All right.
Look forward to seeing you all soon. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks
Bye.
again, John. This was fantastic. Thanks
You're
for the
welcome.
invite.
You're welcome.
Loved it.
Thank you.
Good to see you. Well done, Liz. You're muted. You're still muted. Bye.
I think it went really well.
There you
Me
go.
too.
Yeah.
Me too. Tom, so one of the things I'll ask by email as well is feedback and observations from all the panelists, right?
Yeah.
I'll tell you exactly the question that I had for you guys was Liz did a tremendous job of moving through the content that we had identified, the questions that we said we wanted to address. And I thought, I always want to know where the conversation is going as an attendee. So I would have liked to have seen just the top line questions or statements that we had in the outline. Would you have been comfortable or uncomfortable with that?
I don't think it's necessary. I'm not sure that we give a synopsis of what the talk is going to be about. And I think if we're too rigid, I think it's the same thing as writing something. Great to have an outline, excellent to be able to have the freedom to move off of it and take sometimes, and it's in an hour, you can't do such a deep dive, but go into a little bit more detail about something. So I always feel like, and if you don't do an adequate job on item 3 or whatever, the people who came for item 3 are going to be really upset about that.
Mhm.
So I think it's good for us to know in our own minds where we want to go with it, and then be a little bit more open to where it actually goes.
My experience with the conversation was that we had the 3 topics you dipped in to one of the other ones and then looped back. And so the result was it was beautifully woven. That was my experience.
Some things you don't really get the answer that you're looking for. And it's okay, we're on this loop now. How does that relate back to where we want to be? So people get that question answered as well. So
you did a very professional job of making those loop backs. So thank you.
Everybody here had stuff. Everybody's a professional. Everybody has that experience. And we're just preaching the same thing that we're telling people to do in their book. You already have the knowledge.
Right.
And you have the expertise. All we're doing is helping you package it. And I think that's what everybody came in with today. And that's really gratifying, is working with people who aren't like, I don't know, everybody knew. That's the benefit. I'd love to continue doing more with this. I'd like to get into the audiobook aspect, because the audiobook,
we didn't.
This is where books are, and this is where audiobooks are going. And audiobooks are like here now, but they're going here.
So this will be a familiar statement. Okay, Liz, so let's just do it. This is exactly the conversation that we had before.
So I think it's marketing, like creating. I think there are a couple more things that can come out of this. Is how does a writer create? If you don't have a platform, how do you even go about doing that? Because that is a great conversation for people. And even Yvonne touched a little bit about the traditional publishing world, there's only 5 big publishers now to begin with.
Right.
And they're not going to take most of us on as writers. They're going to go with they want Stephen King. So there's that. But even the writers I know who dealt with the big guys, they still want you to schlep your book. Or they're not giving you a marketing budget. They're not even giving you a roadmap to do it. So everything, I don't care who's